Yeah, welcome to this podcast. I have with me Professor Meenakshi Rajeev, who is currently the Reserve Bank of India Chair Professor at the Institute for Social and Economic Change. Professor Rajeev graduated from IIT Kanpur in Statistics and did her PhD in Mathematical Economics from the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. She has worked as a faculty taught in University of California, San Diego, Central Michigan University, Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Kolkata, Presidency College, Kolkata. Professor Rajiv's area of research include game theory, banking and credit channel, industrial economics, and development economics. Professor Rajiv has published more than 100 articles in reputed journals and as working papers from India and abroad. Her recent book, Emerging Issues in Economic Development from Oxford University Press and Financial Access of the Urban Poor in India, Story of Exclusion from Springer are worth mentioning here. Professor Rajiv has visited a number of large universities in USA, UK, Germany, France, Norway, including Cornell University, University of California, San Diego, Castle University, University of Essex. The subject of today's podcast will be two working paper that Professor wrote for the International Labour Organization. Yeah, welcome to this podcast, Professor Rajiv.
Thank you, Professor Manhar Singh.
Yes. I kind of, start by asking you some personal questions. In the sense, where were you raised in India, and then what motivated you to study statistics at the undergrad level, which you did at IIT Kanpur, and then you subsequently, go on to pursue your PhD in economics from ISI Kolkata. Yes, Professor.
Yeah, actually, I was raised in Guwahati, which is a town in the northeastern part of India, in the state of Assam. And my father was a mathematics professor at the Guwahati University. So he motivated me to study either mathematics or statistics. I took up statistics with his motivation. And he and his professor, who is a very well-known statistician, Professor Jyoti Medhi, both actually inspired me to go to IIT Kanpur, and I have done the entrance test and got selected and took the opportunity and went to IIT Kanpur to do my mathematics my statistics MA at IIT Kanpur.
Okay. So, ma'am, then subsequently you went on to, get your PhD in economics. So, as you were doing your PhD in economics,
yes.
do you remember any professor or an economist, then as you were doing your PhD that sort of left an imprint on you as you began your professional career?
Yeah, a large number of professors have inspired me. In IIT Kanpur, I remember Professor Dipankar Sharma, who was highly inspiring. I learned a lot from Professor Dipankar Sharma. And thereafter, after completing my MSc in statistics from IIT Kanpur, I went to ISI to work in one research project for a brief period, and then I saw the kind of research that is done at ISI, and I wrote their entrance test. And I was open to do PhD either in statistics or in economics, because in economics also we use a lot of statistics and mathematics. And therefore, I was called for an interview by the economics department. And so I took the opportunity and went and appeared for the interview. And after that, I got selected, and Professor Dipankar Dasgupta became my supervisor, and he was an economics theorist. And he inspired me a lot. I learned everything in economics from Professor Dipankar Dasgupta. If one person very important in my career as an economics career, whatever little I have achieved, it is only because of Professor Dipankar Dasgupta. Apart from Dipankar Dasgupta, there was also another professor who was there during my PhD days. He used to visit ISI Kolkata. He was former director, and now he is no more. Professor Amitava Bose, who was former director of IIM Kolkata. I also learned a lot from him, and he also many times he helped me, and I could have some discussions with him, and I got inspired by him. And then when I later went to work, there are several persons who inspired me, and I learned from them. Professor Amitava Bose, who was there in Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Kolkata. Professor Sugata Marjit helped me enormously. I always know very grateful to him. In Isaac, Professor Govind Rao, Professor R.S. Deshpande, our former director. These are people, there are large number of people who have actually inspired me, helped me in my learning and what I achieved in all these endeavors. So I gratefully acknowledge their help in my career.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Rajeev, for telling us about all the professors and economists that sort of have inspired you to take on the journey that you have. Ma'am, if I can ask you, any, like, in the contemporary era, any economist in particular that you sort of admire for his contribution to the literature?
Yes, there are large number of economists whose work very good, outstanding work. Professor Amartya Sen's capability theory. I think it is a really very great contribution. Then Professor Joseph Stiglitz work on asymmetric information, because I work on financial sector. I get ideas from reading his work. So there are many great economists whose work inspire me. These are two names I am saying, but they are not all. If I tell everybody, then we will not have enough time, because there are large number of great economists from whom we have learned in our life and use their work either directly or indirectly in our research.
Yeah, absolutely, ma'am. You bring up these two names. Their work has sort of has had a lot of practical implications for designing larger development policies. And so this is where Professor, given that you mentioned you worked a lot on the development sector, so I would bring in your work now, and I mean, like you now, to identify, Professor, what are the pressing issues facing the Indian economy at this stage? In doing so, I would like you to identify two challenges in the development sector that needs to be addressed in the context of Indian economy, Professor Rajeev.
Yeah. See, Indian economy today, I think it is performing well, but now with this entirely open economy setting that we work, we have external disturbances like Ukraine war or the COVID pandemic. All these impacts us. We cannot be isolated and decoupled from the world economy. And therefore, we face various challenges as a result, some of which are not actually emanating from India. Our government is trying to address this as best as they can. But You asked me about challenges,
Yeah,
two important challenges. I would say one challenge, of course, is employment generation,
yeah,
which is a major challenge because to be globally competitive, we have to be productive.
yeah,
And to be productive, we have to use modern technologies which give you more production with less input cost.
yeah,
But these technologies are also not labor intensive. As you use more and more high-end
yeah,
technologies, they are labor displacing,
yeah,
and therefore employment generation through employment intensive industries
yeah,
is a very big challenge for a labor surplus and highly populated country like India.
yeah,
And this challenge government is trying through various means. mm, um, but this is a this challenge is a major challenge for us because there is high level of inequality
yeah,
also. If you really calculate Gini coefficient, the standard measure of income inequality, you may not see a big number.
uh-huh,
But if you actually look at no, top percentile of the people. They are
mhm,
really very rich people, a class of very rich people,
yeah,
and a class of not no quite poor people. And if they face any distress due to any reason, natural,
yeah,
it may be natural calamities, or it may be, they will really go below poverty line, and they're at the margin. So there is a big problem there. Large percentage of people still remaining in agriculture
yeah,
because of not having employment opportunity in other sectors.
yes,
That also brings me to the second major challenges
yeah,
is that we have a very huge informal sector.
yes,
Informal sectors are there in many developing nations,
yeah,
but in our country, informal sector is very, very huge. Formal sector generates very small percentage of jobs. And so therefore, it has become like a kind of subsistence level employment for people.
yes,
If they do not want to be in agriculture, they open a small shop or
yes, yes,
kirana store or
yeah,
do such jobs.
yeah,
So that informality is or informal sector. If you today look at rural employment,
mhm,
actually about 40% of rural employment in the rural non-farm sector. So rural
okay,
non-farm sector has become quite big actually. It's not all in farm sector, but if you look at NSSO data and look at the
uh-huh,
non-farm sector, more than 80% of those are own account enterprises. Own account enterprises means they do not have any hired labor. That means they are subsistence level enterprises. So household, they do something small activities, having kirana store or making some beedi rolling or some such paper packet cover making or some such small activities they do,
mhm,
and their income is also very, very low. So how to transform this and at
mhm,
least bring some of these enterprises to a level where they earn a decent income and they can grow, because most of them are also not growing, either
yeah,
stagnant or depleting. So
yeah,
how to make them grow so that they can go to a level where they are no longer are this kind of subsistence
yes,
enterprise is the other challenge. So those enterprise, if they can become slightly bigger, they can generate employment. So employment challenge and this informality challenge
yeah,
are interrelated. And I think this, if we can address to some extent,
mhm,
it will be a great achievement.
yeah. No, just to get this in perspective. So, what is the size of the informal sector in the Indian economy? which is also called as unorganized sector, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think about the 8% or so people, less than 10% people work in organized sector. Rest work in the unorganized sector, which also includes agriculture, where half the population are working. So it's very huge that way.
Okay. 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 So, Professor, I come to my next question, which is linked to women empowerment, which is where you have actually done a lot of work. And so, what comes across is that women empowerment can be achieved by giving women access to finance, and so that then opens up number of opportunities for them. And you wrote one paper for the Asian Development Bank, where you sort of say that encouraging women's entrepreneurship has several benefits for the economy, such as improving livelihood opportunities and closing the gender gap in the labor market, thereby alleviating poverty and enabling sustainable economic development. So obviously what comes across is that there are a number of impediments that women entrepreneurs, especially in the rural areas, have to face. So, Professor, why don't you highlight, those challenges which sort of, impede them, especially in the rural areas, and also, if possible, in the urban areas. Yes, Professor.
Thank you. This is a very important issue you have raised, and it relates to one of the work I am doing at present, which is funded by the Azim Premji Foundation, where I look at the women's employment as an entrepreneur, women's engagement as an entrepreneur in the common services sector. Common services centers are those centers which are initiated under Government of India's Digital India program, where as nowadays, if you want to get any welfare scheme access, you have to be enrolled through the online platform. In addition, there are also other identification avenues, such as you have Aadhaar card, you have PAN card, etc. Those are also online. And common citizens, even in urban areas, are not able to do this enrollment online on their own. And to address this problem, there are these common services centers where it's like a small entrepreneurship activity, where these entrepreneurs help ordinary citizens to get enrolled for these various schemes and for Aadhaar card, PAN card, etc. And wherever online enrollment is needed, they help with taking a small fee. So this actually revolutionized actually the whole use of digital platform by the common citizens, because there are large number of such CSCs in the country. Today, as of March 2023, there are 5,19,000 CSCs, functional CSCs, of which 4,09,000 odd are in rural areas, and the urban areas also have about 1,09,000 CSCs. So you can see that there is a huge network where they do about 297 lakh such transactions. And digital Seva portal transactions are 164 lakhs. So there is a huge activities going on, and in that women are also involved. And because this women, this also helped them to become economically empowered because they will be earning something. These are micro entrepreneurs. With a digital kind of a laptop or such setup, and you can have a biometric machine, a laptop, and a printer or so. That's your kind of investment. With that, you can start this business. And these women are not only feeling economically empowered, the sense that they are helping the society to actually access some of the government schemes, get welfare benefits from the government, and through these women entrepreneurs give a very satisfying feeling to these women. And this, I think, is a very important achievement. But the problem is that to operate or to become a CSC entrepreneur, you have to be digitally literate, because each scheme has a different process of making people enrolled in that scheme. For example, crop insurance is a very different process. If you want to do banking, you have to do very different processes. And for these, they have to write qualifying exam, then they pass, and then they get the identity card for doing this kind of work. But then each work has each scheme enrollment is different, and you have to constantly learn. And that many women are not able to do because they are not so much exposed to this kind of work. But some women are doing very well, actively engaged in such work, and they are learning every day, using online platform, using YouTube videos, using WhatsApp groups where people share their knowledges, and using Facebook. Through all these online modes, they are becoming more knowledgeable by learning constantly from each other. So this is also a very notable achievement by women through this CSC VLE program, which I am studying now under the Ajin Premji Foundation funded project. So, so I think this is a very good initiative. This was not recently initiated, but with the recent development of online platform, having mobile phone with everyone, this has really picked up.
Especially after pandemic.
Especially after pandemic, but pandemic has a very interesting impact on this CSC business, because during my interview, it came out that these CSC entrepreneurs were actually having, many of them were actually having a very good business prior to the pandemic. But during the pandemic, because the movements were restricted, ordinary citizens themselves became knowledgeable in using the digital platform. And as a result, citizens, many people now, they themselves start doing this work on their own rather than going to a CSC entrepreneur. So therefore, pandemic has a positive impact perhaps, and also a negative impact that came out from my field survey.
Yeah, from what I read, this was launched during the, I think, 2004 or 5. Is that correct?
Yes, I think around 2006 or so, it was launched by long time back. And but then that time we were not using so much digital platforms, so it was it got picked up recently. In a very, now you see large number of CSCs everywhere, in rural areas also, where also women are doing becoming CSC VLEs. You talked about my work with the Asian Development Bank Institute, where we looked some of the rural areas in the Northeast, and this Azim Prezi Foundation, where we are looking at urban areas, where also this is a very important entity, and women are becoming empowered through both social empowerment as well as economic empowerment through this CSCVLE activities.
So, Professor, you have, grassroots level experience of, how things are changing for the better, for the women. Because of, initiatives like, the Common Services Center, which you have just, highlighted. So, Professor, do you, remember any one or two specific examples of, women that sort of, came up, because of these initiatives, which you, let's say, during a field visit, sort of, came across specific?
Yes. There are many women. Actually, when we looked at these women entrepreneurs, we have classified them in three categories. One is the active category, where women are themselves involved in this work, and they are learning by themselves and so on. And other is the passive category. Passive category are women where the CSC is in the name of the woman, but it is basically run by a male member, either a spouse or a son or someone. So they are the passive category of entrepreneur. And the third one is, we call it discouraged category or dormant category, which actually started the business, but when they felt some difficulty, then they stopped the business and they did not come back to open the business. So in the active category, there are a large number of women who are actually a role model, I would say. And they have some basic knowledge. One woman, she had some basic knowledge. With that, she wanted to do some standard business, which in rural India, usually people do, like a tailoring or some pickle making. But then her husband inspired her and told her that you should not do this. Since you have this computer knowledge, why don't you open a CSC? And that she took up seriously and opened a CSC business. And slowly she started to learn. And after doing all household work in the night, she is very active in WhatsApp platform, etc. And then she started to do this work very seriously and did very well. And then she became a CSC VLE trainer. Because she started training other women to become entrepreneurs, successful CSC VLE entrepreneur. So there are such stories where case studies where women have done very well.
Thank you, Professor, for telling us about how this is making a positive impact and sort of driving innovation in businesses, in the rural areas. Professor Rajeev, thank you for giving such a detailed account of the impact Common Services Center is making. Now I move on to the next question, which is related to financial inclusion. This is where you have actually done a lot of work also. And this is important because you brought out that informality is characteristics of the Indian labor market. So what we do see is that large number of poor are self-employed either in agriculture or in small businesses, which is informal in nature. Just to point this out again. So, and because of this, they require a steady stream of financial resources to meet their working capital needs. And so, Professor, I want now you to highlight as to how does lack of financial option impede their needs, specific needs, when they are in the informal sector. Yes, Professor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So very financial inclusion is also a very important aspect for Indian economy.
Yeah,
And we have made enormous progress in this through the Dhan Yojana program.
yeah,
So basically, financial inclusion is the access to formal financial services by the weaker section of the society.
yeah,
And it has actually 4 components. Just to give a little bit background, and I will come to the question that you have asked.
yeah.
It has 4 components, which is one is savings, other is credit, third is insurance, and fourth is remittances. And all these 4 components are very, very important because in our country, there are many poor who actually keep their money at home or keep their money to save through chit funds, which are not very safe. So savings avenue is important. Credit is very important for an economy where this large number of people are self-employed, and about which I will come in a moment.
Yeah.
Usually do not get so much emphasized, but insurance is also a very important aspect of financial inclusion, because poor are often faced with various situations which are risky, and for risk mitigation, insurance is critical. For example, look at crop insurance, where adoption rate is not very high in our country. And the fourth is remittances, using formal services for remittances, which is also important because large percentage of poor people are internally, they migrate from one place to another in search of jobs. And when they get employment in a particular place, they send back money to their home in rural areas. And that's why these remittance services are important. And all these services, access and uses, both are very important, because we initially did not have financial inclusion for a large percentage of people. About half the population were not having bank accounts, and therefore we gave a lot of emphasis on access, and we did it for right reasons. Because
so one second,
people were
just
not.
to point this out. So you are talking of the time period before Jan Dhan Yojana scheme was launched at this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So then therefore access was not so much there. And then in 2006, actually, first financial inclusion drive was initiated in the post-liberalization era. And then the no-frill accounts, etc., were opened, various instruments were started, and the financial inclusion has improved. But it is after 2014, when Jan Dhan Yojana was initiated, a massive drive was created, and thereby almost everyone is today financially included in India. So that is the access part. But then there is a usage part, that you have an access to bank, you have a bank account, and because of direct cash benefit transfer, some amount of money is also coming to your bank account for various government schemes, like LPG subsidy is one for which money is coming to people's account, and there are various other schemes. But you have to use that account for the right purpose. And that brings me to your question about access to credit. Access to credit, to my mind, is very critical, because we have this very huge percentage of people working in informal sector. and as an entrepreneur, as a self-employed person.
Yeah.
An agriculture farmer is also an entrepreneur. He's also producing and selling.
Yeah.
Now, and they need regular funds for their working capital needs, for seed, fertilizer. A farmer needs funds, and for other working capital. Non-farm sector needs credit.
Yeah.
Small businesses need credit.
Yeah.
Now, farm sector has better access to credit because of the priority sector lending norms, which dictate 18% of loans to be given to farmers. So if you look at NSSO data, you will see that the farmers' access to credit is relatively much better than the non-farm sector.
Okay.
Non-farm sector, however, is not getting enough credit. Very small percentage of people get credit through non-farm sector.
Okay.
Now, with the introduction of Mudra Yojana, there are some credit is disbursed to the small businesses, but India being a huge country with large percentage of people in this informal sector, there are still many who are lack of funds is a critical problem. So for any business, as you know, that for regular working capital needs and the capital good investment, you need funds. And most of these people do not have funds. So credit as an instrument of financial inclusion is very, very important in our country, that you cannot emphasize it more than this, because it is really something without which this business cannot become larger over time and generate additional employment.
Okay. Yeah, and so from, in the literature, what also comes across is that most of the times the supply of the financial institutions are also, not up to the level, that, you would expect. So would you, Professor, make the case that that sort of has also improved after the Jan Dhan Yojana? Like we have more sort of, banks, all types of banks, I mean, here commercial, cooperative, that are now, based out of rural areas, because you need supply and demand both, to match.
Yeah. Demand is, unmet demand is always there. But still, I would say that there is enough unmet demand for funds. And that is why we are not able to wipe out the village moneylenders. Village moneylenders still exist. It has come down over time. If you look at the NSSO recent round data, you will see that village moneylenders were earlier 20% of people were household having loan from village moneylender, which has come down to 13% in the recent round, 2018 survey round. So then, but still people are depending on village moneylender. So therefore, it is clear that there is a unmet demand for loan where non-banking financial institutions, microfinance institutions are pushing. But many of these come with a high interest rate, and bank loans are much cheaper, and therefore to give loan facility at a reasonable rate of interest, these people should have uses of the banking services in terms of taking credit.
Okay. And so, ma'am, one point also which I would, like you to, throw some light on is, are there a specific socio-economic factors, I mean, geographical factors also playing a part here? Like, do we have more?
Yes.
Yes,
definitely. There were in earlier NSSO round data, if you analyze, one would see that some of the socially deprived classes, like scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, have lower access to credit, but now that has reduced considerably. But scheduled tribes still have lower access to credit. Similarly, NSSO data also gives information about access to credit by male-headed household versus female-headed household. Female-headed household, where head of the households are female, and usually often they are widow with small children. They have lower access to credit. And therefore, one can see some of these people having lower access to credit. And then state-wise also, there are enormous differences. For example, Northeast have a much lower access to credit than Kerala. Kerala is at a very good position compared to other states in access to credit. But if you go to Assam or Bihar, its access to credit is very low. Even in Andhra Pradesh, there is the informal credit is quite high. And therefore, there is state-wise differences, and therefore, state-wise interventions are also needed. Means we should not think that no one shirt will fit all, not like that. We need some emphasis, more emphasis in certain states than in other states.
Okay. And so just on this point, ma'am, are there some initiatives being taken by the state government in order to, correct this? Because you cannot rely solely on the central government in order to,
Yes, definitely. You cannot rely solely on the central government to solve all these problems, because India is a vast country, very big country. So therefore, you have to depend on the state government's endeavors also. And state governments are also putting their own effort. And but to some extent, regional disparity has remained. And therefore I think the states that are not doing well, agriculture is a state subject. The states that are not doing well, those states should actually put more emphasis on giving credit to farmers and making credit accessible to farmers. And different infrastructure, for example, irrigation facilities is something which states should provide. So therefore, state-wise differences exist, and state government to some extent have taken care of that, but still I would say they need to do more in order to improve the conditions of this informal sector. And small and marginal farmers, which around 80% of our farmers are small and marginal with no savings. They need regular access to credit. And some of the states where access to credit is very low, which one can easily see from the recent NSSO round also. And those states should take extra initiatives. For example, you talked about cooperative bank. Cooperative bank is a grassroots level institution which, if operate properly, can really give access to credit to the poorest section. It has a lowest level institution which are called primary agricultural credit societies, PACs. So these packs are very useful for the poorest category. We can access credit through packs. And NSSO data also shows that states where cooperatives are working well, in those states, poorest farmers are getting better access to credit. So reviving the cooperative system, because cooperative system is also faced with various problems, including non-performing assets. So reviving the cooperatives, proper monitoring the cooperatives and making them work properly so that they can function better and give access to credit to farmers is very important. And in this regard, I would like to mention that in the recent budget, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman has talked about digitizing these packs
Okay.
And which is really important, because once you digitize and information is digital,
Yeah.
then you can easily see what is the non-performing asset, who is paid, who is not paid loan, everything becomes, information becomes easily available, and you can take actions more easily. So I consider this as a very important move.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. That just, brings me to the last, question, which is, do we know anything about the big corporate houses, doing anything on this front? Okay.
Corporate houses can help the rural farm sector through contract farming. And some of the corporate houses are doing that, who are in agribusiness. So, for example, Reliance Fresh is one farm which is in agribusiness. So they can give contract to the farmers, and farmers then can produce and sell to the corporate house, and thereby earn a kind of a good return on their produce. They don't have to market, but as you know, marketing is a big problem for small and marginal farmers. Now, if they get a good market, ready-made market through this corporate, from contract farming, that is really helpful to them. However, the size of this contract farming segment is really, really small, and therefore one needs to have a bigger size of this segment, so that more number of farmers can benefit from this.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Professor, for
Thank you.
giving us such a detailed account of what aspect of the developmental is missing in India, and what can be done to address that, so as to make sure that more people are financially included, and also that more people are included in the formal sector of the labor market. Yes, Professor. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Manhar.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.